We'll call to order this meeting of the MSAD 49 Board of School Directors. Another set of headphones. All right, roll call. Booton?
Here.
Boyden here. Caverly? Neil, you have to unmute and then say it.
Here.
Thank you. Davis Folsom?
Here.
Thank you. Dumont is unable to be here. Flood is not here. Hussey?
Here.
Kinley?
Here.
Kugelmeyer?
Here. It's echoey too.
Lambert is unable to be here. Reeves? Not here. White?
Here.
And Williams.
Here.
Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to accept the minutes of the May 7th, 2021 meeting.
If I unmute this, if there's an echo.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Kara and seconded by Roy. Any discussion? Seeing none. Booton?
Yes.
Boyden? Yes. Caverly? Davis Folsom?
Yes.
Hussey?
Yes.
Kinley?
Yes.
Kugelmeyer?
Yes. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. White?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
That passes 8-0-1. Do we have any citizen input at this time? The phone line is
Available.
available. Just one moment. Our operator stepped away from his terminal, so we're waiting for him to come back, which will give people another moment if they're trying to call in. No, we don't have anyone on the line, so we will move ahead to old business. Under old business, I do want to ask if there are any members who would like to participate in the board's award review committee. The applications were due in by, I think, last Friday, and Janine does have those. So if we are looking for some board members to participate in that. And so if you would like to do that, you can feel free to reach out to Mrs. Hersom and Janine, and they will either scan you copies of the nominations, or you could come to the office. Under new business, we will hear from the principals on the end of year events. Oh, I have you on mute. Okay, you're unmuted.
No, I can't.
Do you want me to ask one of them to start? Okay. Can we start with Mrs. Lee?
Certainly. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to share with you our work and our plans. Over the last few weeks, we've done a number of things as a staff in both Albion and Fairfield to prepare for closure of this school year. Over the last weeks, we've worked to a schedule so the teaching staff at the primary can safely come in one or two at a time to pack up their classroom in the morning and retrieve any necessary items for continued teaching. And for Albion teachers, they have been on an afternoon schedule to enter their classrooms after the support workers leave for the day, keeping numbers low and safe in both buildings. The teaching staff have arranged student belongings so support staff could bag and label student items for scheduled family pickup events. Our district pre-K teachers and staff have or are delivering this week summer learning buckets for their students. The learning buckets contain materials for student exploration in a beach pail with a shovel, and also contains crayons, a pad of construction paper, scissors, Play-Doh, sidewalk chalk, bubbles, seeds, a plant pot with soil, and a picture book, Kindness A to Z. Head Start has released COVID funding, which provided these materials delivered via a pre-K staff parade. They will also be putting together care packages for all of our district pre-K families. The care package will be delivered in a laundry basket filled with assorted items, including shampoo and conditioner, sunscreen with safety tips, hand soap with washing education sheets, toothbrushing kits for all family members, and a dental education sheet, laundry detergent, dish detergent, tissues, a roll of paper towels, and a roll of toilet paper. This care package is being distributed by the pre-K teaching staff by the end of the school year. Also, families that have expressed a need to our pre-K family service coordinators also have received bags of food, and the family service coordinators have continued to connect with families in need of more service, such as unemployment and SNAP benefits help. Albion K-5 teachers will be present and hold a closure event in, around, and through our school's parking lot circle on June 2nd from noon to 1. During this time, students will pick up their belongings from their teachers and reconnect to wave and say goodbye for the summer. Following this closure activity, we will hold a ceremony for our 6th graders in our school parking lot for immediate families only as they remain in their family car. At the end of the ceremony, which includes awards such as the Main College Circle Scholarship, the Presidential Awards, and certificates of completion, parents will drive their car towards the front of the building and receive the envelope of certificates. At that time, we'll form a line of cars, and the Albion Fire Department will lead us through town for a 6th grade parade. On Wednesday, June 3rd, from 6 to 7 p.m., the Fairfield Primary Kindergarten and all school staff are having a reverse parade around the park across the street from our school. This reverse parade is the primary's chance to say goodbye to our students, have them collect their belongings from their teacher, and wave them off to a happy summer. Just like in an Albion, we've asked all of our families to remain in their cars while they drive around the park, finding their teacher who will hand them their things. We have sent a letter for the end of the year for both schools that outlines the specifics, including parade details and directions, so they're aware of our end of year events. Thank you, and this concludes my report for Albion Elementary and Fairfield Primary.
Thank you, Lori. And I did want to mention, Lori just mentioned, I'd asked all the principals to generate a letter to students and families outlining the end of the year activities and some acknowledgement of what this experience has been, and that we have some plans in place to get our students back on track and to recognize the end of the year activities, closure events in some form, though it's not what we are traditionally engaging in. But and I've seen a little bit of this as I was over at the Benton School, for example, where families have come through the parking lot where teachers have been sitting out there by grade level. So just a little bit of connection with the school, knowing that families and students are remembered and that we look forward to greeting them in the fall. So if those letters haven't go out, the deadline was, so by tomorrow, K-12 families will have received these letters from their principals. Ms. Gordon, are you, there you are, present and able to speak right now?
I am here. Thank you.
Thank you.
I won't repeat everything that Ms. Lee has already said about the pre-K. Obviously, our pre-K program in Clinton is also putting together those care packages, and those will be delivered to our pre-K families as well. Our staff has put together times for their families to come over to Clinton, the Clinton parking lot. That will happen for us the week of June 1st, and they've done that by grade levels. Shout out to, as Lori said, the classroom teachers who came in for a couple hours a few weeks ago and sort of organized their classroom and the students' belongings. And then another shout out to our custodial staff who bagged them up and got names on them and organized them so we can do that in an organized fashion. And teachers will be presenting their students also with some small token. Some of them have homemade gifts. Others have done certificates, something just to say goodbye and acknowledge the fact that the kiddos will be moving on to next year. In these final weeks, they're also continuing, their virtual learning. I've joined a lot of either Zoom meetings or their Google Hangouts Meets meetings, and it's really nice to see the kiddos' faces and to get to say hello and to look at the smiles on their faces when they're talking to their friends, because this is their reality now and this is how they've been seeing them for the last few weeks. So they will continue that on through, of course, June 5th, where that will end. We will also be putting together during that week a table of lost and found, because as you all are well aware, we still have those items floating around in the building. So we're going to give families an opportunity to go through those as well and identify any of those items. And our sixth graders will be stepping up to the junior high. For us, we'll do that on the evening of June 1st. And we will have specialists will be there to give out different awards, phys ed awards, art awards, music and band awards, along with classroom awards such as honors for first and second quarter. We've written just a little blurb for each student to make it a little more special, so we can talk about each one of them individually. In the letter that I sent home to sixth grade parents, I invited them to also decorate their vehicles so we can sort of do something a little fun and different for them. We'll have some balloons outside for them, and we're also going to have some confetti poppers so we can throw some confetti at them as they drive away after they have all been recognized that evening. So we're going to have two separate ceremonies because we do have 12 students in Mrs. Coffin's class and 13 in Mrs. Cloutier's class, so we can follow all the guidelines. We're going to do one class at 4 and the other class at 5:30, and that's how we will wrap up our year with the sixth graders. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Gordon. Mr. Wedge.
Good evening. How's everybody doing tonight? Good. So a lot of similar things from the other elementary schools. We did work on a letter together. So the letter that was sent out by Kathy, Laura, and I are very similar with a few minor differences. But those were mailed out this week. I also sent out invitations to our sixth grade families for our awards event, which will be on June 2nd, which I'll go into some more detail in a moment. So at this time, as just like the other schools, all teachers have had an opportunity to close their room for the summer. It was a hasty closure, but I think it was very important, and I'm appreciative of all those teachers that were able to come in and get that work done. It took a lot of organizational. I'd like to thank our secretaries, Abby and Teresa, were really kind of the wheelhouse behind making sure that all worked really well, as well as this week too, as we had families come in throughout the week. So starting Monday, our grades 1 through 5 students and their families had the opportunity to not only say hello to their teacher, but also collect belongings that they left behind. I don't have an exact number, but it was about half, I'm guessing, of our families participated in this. Some classrooms was probably 80%, or even close to 100, while others were much less. We also had many families that have called the office and are scheduling a separate time to come pick up their belongings because they were working during the time slot, which was 11 to 3 each day this past week, and we're going to end it tomorrow. Items that are left behind, we'll return them to families in the fall. The first grade team, Mrs. Blaze and myself, we've been working on our first grade step-up event. Typically at the end of May, we would invite our kindergartners, our future first graders, to come over to the school, and we'd have an important step-up event. So we have spent some time talking about what that could look like. In the immediate future, we've developed an online video that we're going to post on May 28th. So they're going to hear basically Mrs. Blaze and myself talking. We're going to go through kind of what our first graders could expect for next year. The teachers and myself and Mrs. Blaze agree that it would be important to have something in person if possible in the fall. So pending some sort of normalcy or whenever that is, we'll also invite our new first graders and their families to kind of come and have a kind of a curriculum step-up night. I am excited to share, this is a great piece of news I'm really happy about sharing. It's despite our school closure, Josh Lund, our music teacher, who's been working on a fundraiser to get some basically the final pieces to our playground that are musically oriented, like large drums and other things that make sounds, and they're pieces that would go on both sides of our playground. So we've been doing fundraising, and we were able to raise enough to purchase those items. So major contributors were from the Benton School Council, our PTO, and also the high school band boosters, in addition to school fundraising. So those items have been purchased, and we're working with operations to get those installed for the fall. And I know we'll have many families over the course of the summer that use our playground that I think will get a chance to use those. So that's really exciting to me. We do understand that it will be important for families to get closure for the school year. We've had a lot of discussions as a staff about this and as an admin team. And normally teachers, even on a normal year, would do some sort of closure activity. We have our student-led conferences, and we also have classroom parties and events, things that we would do to celebrate a year of learning. So while it won't be the same thing, our teachers are doing something for our students, whether it's through a Zoom or a Meet session, or some teachers have worked it into this past week as they met with students and families. They were able to do some sort of, either give a gift to the families and, and just say goodbye, which I think is going to be really important. Our sixth grade awards event, I'll talk about that briefly right now. It's similar to the other schools. We're calling it kind of a drive-in event, and it's this past week. It's been a time for us to kind of practice what it's going to look like and work out the kinks, because we're going to follow the same model that we've done our grades 1 through 5. Our families came to meet with teachers. We're going to follow the similar format. So we're going to have our 5 teachers spread out across 3 lanes, basically, in our large parking lot. And we're going to have staff that are going to be directing traffic as they come in. We're going to invite staff to come in to line up the road so they can wave and celebrate and have signs, and we'll have balloons. So families will come in, they'll be directed to which lane their child's teacher's in. They will then drive to that lane. We'll have cones marking it all off, and they'll go and be able to meet with their teacher. There they'll receive their promotion certificate and any awards that they've earned. We also got them a special gift as a yard sign, so they can put out in their yard to kind of help the community, or remind the community to help them celebrate their promotion to junior high. I think it'll be a really special evening, and I think it's going to flow really nicely based on kind of what we're able to work out this past week. And by the way, we had wonderful weather this week, so it was perfect for Benton. I hope the other schools have great weather too. And while families will be required to remain in their car, our school staff will be out there, spaced out, so they can kind of talk and celebrate. We have talked a little bit about what summer learning could look like. Typically, Mrs. Blaze and I would have our Principals Challenge event. So we're going to do it a little bit different this year, which is going to look like virtual opportunities that will be posted on each grade level's web page on our website. So teachers will be working on those. We've talked about it. We still have some work to do, but those will be posted by the end of the school year, so families can continue to practice these learning opportunities for the fall. And I think just finally, I'm incredibly proud of the work Benton teachers have accomplished over these past few months. I'm blown away every day. Their attitudes have been wonderful. They've often lifted my own spirits up as they just work, tirelessly to kind of make the most of this. We are excited and a little bit anxious about what the plans are going to look like for the fall, but we're kind of patiently waiting for that, that final, if we ever get it, what the fall is going to look like, which will come eventually. But so we're just doing everything we can to make sure we're prepared for that. And so we're excited for the professional development opportunities that we'll have after our student learning time is over. So thank you for your time, and I hope everyone has a good evening. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Wedge. Mr. Boynton.
Thank you, Mr. Herson. Good evening, everyone. So just some of the things that the junior high is working on to wrap up our year. To start off with, the custodians have been working very hard to empty all of the lockers throughout the building. So every locker has been emptied. Items have been bagged up, tagged. They're organizing the gym by home rooms, and starting next week, I'll send out a robocall as well as other communication to parents so they can start flowing in to pick up their students' items. It'll be an organized manner, and that will be explained in the robocall, but we're going to start that next week. Not on Monday though, because it is Memorial Day. So that'll be beginning next week. And again, our custodians have been working very hard throughout the building. They found dozens of library books, so they got those back to the library to get those all checked in. So as far as the bigger events for the junior high, typically we'd hold an incoming 7th grade, 6th grade parent night about the last week of school typically. That's a fairly big event. It would be hard to organize physically, so the plan is to record one and post that online and make sure it is available for any incoming 7th graders and their parents and their families to view and to listen to. The typical agenda that would be on the evening for that evening will be presented virtually. So that will be happening. I'm planning on posting that that first week of June. And the bigger event for the junior high is the 8th grade celebration. And you look at our numbers, our 8th grade class is, averages around 150 students. It's like having a senior class. And the 8th grade celebration night is typically, the Williamson Auditorium is packed with, the capacity is 858 and all those seats are taken. So it'd be very physically, the logistics would be difficult to have a physical type of celebration. So Mrs. Reynolds and I and some other teachers are going to be involved in recording what would be the 8th grade celebration, complete with music. I'll have a speech like I typically would. We'll see if we can get some students. They typically have a musical number they perform. See if they can do that. Kind of put that together. I read off the names, present some certificates, and we'd like to see if we can mail the certificates out to the students. Maybe once they get them, take their picture with them and send them to us so we can kind of make a collage and put it on that recording, and then have a celebration that way. Definitely recognize all the 8th graders, as well as some of the awards that they might be getting. Announce those. Have the teachers that would be advising those different groups would present those awards virtually. And if we had to, we could email or mail the certificates. And if we had to wait till the fall to physically get them to the students, if there's something that really can't be mailed, then we could do that in the fall. As far as planning, today teachers met with 6th grade teachers virtually for a 6th to 7th grade transition to see where 6th grade kind of ended in each elementary school back in March. So we'd have an understanding of where students might be landing, either physically when they get to the school or virtually when we start in the fall, however we start. And we also met with the 9th grade teachers today. So the 9th grade teachers could hear where our 8th graders sort of landed in March. So they'd have an understanding when school starts back up in the fall in whatever fashion it is. So we've been planning, and of course the PD week is happening June 8th through the 12th. So we'll be planning very rigorously for the next year. So that's what we've been working on in the junior high, trying to end the year and transition, get ready for the transition to next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boynton. And Mr. Bowers is online.
Yep. Good evening. I'll read down through. We've got some big events, as you know, coming up. We had teachers in today, and we'll have another group in tomorrow, and then a third and final group in on Tuesday, just to do the cleaning up in the rooms and whatnot and putting stuff away that they can. We've got, excuse me, next week with Memorial Day, normally our classes would be Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, with Friday being the open day for catch up and touching base with teachers and letting them plan. But next week, we're just going to go with Tuesday, Thursday, and then Wednesday, Friday classes. Last day for seniors as far as current work is Friday, and then they've got, excuse me, until Wednesday, the 27th to finish up and have their names put on the graduation program, because that's going to go out to the printer Thursday morning. But if we have somebody that finishes up on Friday or Monday, June 1st or 2nd, we'll obviously have them march if they choose to march. We just wouldn't be able to have their name on the program, but we definitely would have them march if they so chose. Also next week, Tuesday, the 26th at 4, we're going to have our NHS induction ceremony for seniors only. That's going to be online. And the reason we did seniors only this year was because we had the tapping or the selection process was kind of mixed up with COVID-19 when we went out on the closure, and we may have missed some underclassmen, or they might not have seen the emails and stuff. So we sent a separate thing out for seniors and whatever. We've got our list. We had nobody new added to it as far as seniors are concerned for NHS. But we'll do just the seniors on Tuesday, and then next fall, we're going to switch from a springtime induction to a late fall induction, so we can allow those kids who get on there as a senior to be able to put it on their resume or on their college applications. Wednesday, the 27th, seniors will be in to pick up caps and gowns. Also on Thursday, like I said, the printers, the programs go to the printer for graduation. Monday, June 1st, we're doing our senior awards, which I think is a combination of sorts for recognizing the seniors who academically have done well, who, honor roll, get the gold cords and whatnot. So we'll recognize that on Monday, June 1st, 6 o'clock online, and we'll put the links up on the websites, on the homepage for the high school, on the district page, on our Facebook page. And we'll broadcast that from the Williamson Center. Tuesday, those students who get awards can show up to school anywhere between 9 and noon and get their stoles or pick up their cords. The certificates we can get mailed out to the kids, so they won't have to come in just to pick up certificates. Wednesday, June 3rd, just because of the hecticness of the end of year stuff, we're going to do a separate video to announce scholarship winners. And Mr. Jones and I will record that video, and then we'll release it at 2 o'clock online so people can view it at their leisure. And then we'll have the scholarship information mailed out to the students as well on that day. Thursday is graduation. We've got a good graduation plan. Hopefully the weather will be good, because it's not everybody come at once. We're going to get information out to the seniors the end of next week, and maybe do an online dry run as far as what the expectations are for them. We're going to be moving through the school, like I explained last time, in family units. So we'll be within the guidelines from CDC. What concerns me probably concerns you, and I think it was brought up the last time, was, if they all show up in mass at once, then that's going to be difficult to control outside the social distancing. So we're going to be broadcasting it live on Facebook. We're going to get an order of graduates out to the kids ahead of time, so everybody can kind of plan their arrival. We're going to have them park down on the Williamson side and walk down towards the main entrance of the high school. And hopefully with staggered arrival departure times, that we should be able to keep the upper lot good with parking, because it will be a long hoof from the back side of the school up and around. And we're not going to open the downstairs, so they'll be coming in through the main entrance and going in as a family unit. And we will broadcast the speeches live. Originally, we were thinking we were going to do it ahead of time just to help with the editing, but we're going to do the valedictorian speech first, salutatorian speech, and class president. Salutatorian class president is Haley Hersey. She's got both, so there's one speech there, and Lydia Townsend is class valedictorian, so she'll give her speech. And we'll be able to have those families in because it will still be under the 50 limit size for families. We'll just have one family on either side of the auditorium to be able to see their kids give the speeches, and then we'll start in with the diploma, issuance of diplomas. And then after graduation, the kids wanted to do a car parade through Fairfield. Originally, the talk was to hit all the towns, but with the time being in the evening, it would be it wouldn't be feasible with the daylight hours. So we will coordinate the takeoff after graduation. That's still a plan in progress. Originally, the idea might have been to go over to KVCC, but now I think we might be doing it from behind the high school. And then once graduation, once the last person exits, we've got the cars will have already been lined up, and then they'll go much like a traditional homecoming route through Fairfield. So at least they can honk their horns, whoop it up, and hopefully some people will be out on the sides, blinking lights or cheering them on. The last day for the underclassmen will be Friday the 5th, and then it's the professional development we'll be doing. The high school, other than the special ed folks, will be new to the NUIA testing, which we'll be using next year to help gauge where the kids are at and then measure their growth. So we'll be doing some work with that. Like Sean had said, the freshman teachers and Mr. Jones had his group meet with the junior high to kind of talk about where the incoming freshmen left off. I'm waiting. I've been attending meetings online statewide with the principals to, hear about plans. Initially, we were talking about how this whole grading piece would work and how the online virtual learning would work. And we transitioned to what the graduations were going to look like. And now we're kind of talking about, what the fall could potentially look like and how we're going to plan for if we're in, if we're not, if we're blended. So we're waiting for some guidance from the state, but people are thinking about it, and that's the big thing that we'll need to kind of be in communication with everybody over the summer. Haven't got things nailed down yet, but we will. And the people have done a great job online, and I think now that they've got that under the belt, we'll be able to prepare and have stuff in line next year in case we come back and then there's a spike and we have to go out or we do some sort of rotation basis. Let me just check my final notes here. I think we've got everything. Letters have gone out, like Mr. Sursum said, the senior letter went out, and we're going to we'll follow that up with a more detailed piece and timeline for them for arrival for graduation. The underclassmen letters went out in the mail today, so folks should be receiving them tomorrow or Saturday. I think that's it. It's been fun. Hopefully graduation will go off without a hitch, and we'll be good to go for the summer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowers, and thank you to all the principals. If there are questions, they've logged out now, but I just again thank the staff and our administrators here who have worked very hard to coordinate the logistics of what they've all described, and the challenge of and the evolution of trying to find a way to have an in-person graduation ceremony has been a lot of work and a lot of coordination and rethinking and checking against guidelines, evolving guidelines. And Dan and his staff have done a phenomenal job. It's going to take some coordination also with the Fairfield Police Department. And again, the worry is only because it will be a great impulse for students who haven't seen each other collectively to want to congregate, and that's something that really flies in the face of what the guidance and the directives have been. So I know Mr. Bowers is going to communicate to families and to the graduates, and he's done his best to incorporate their input and contribution and what they want. Like that parade came out of, I'm sure, those meetings that he's hosted with them. But that when the graduates leave with their families, they get in their vehicles and either go to the rally point down Bulldog Drive or wherever the inception of the parade is going to be. And we are doing this as cleanly as possible. And I am sure that it's something that the kids will appreciate. I saw Kaylee Smith in the building down by the auditorium, who's coordinating some of the recording and the staging, and staff are creating banners and decorations. So as the students come through, they will feel the love of their high school staff, and that's much appreciated. So thank you. And then another note, as you recall, our adult ed director passed away around the time that this was emerging in mid-March. And we are in the process of hiring a new adult ed director. And if any board member wishes to participate in the interviews, please contact me. We're going to be scheduling very soon. I'm coordinating with the staff in that department who have done a great job in just holding the pieces together. But please let me know within a day or two, and certainly the candidate that is recommended will come before the full board. But in that, I am coordinating the June 10th adult education graduation ceremony in her stead, and students will be recognized in a similar format to what the high school seniors are going to be recognized as they're going to be recognized, except it will be down at the adult education building. And the details for that are coming out very shortly for those students and their families. But that's Wednesday, June 10th. It'll be at 6 o'clock. And hopefully it's a nice sunny day, so we can have them pass through outside, because that's a small area. Which leads me to why that ceremony will be limited to that area as I move ahead, if that's all right, with the budget meeting procedure. And of course, the board had selected the June 16th date to have our budget meeting fairly recently. And with that, and in keeping with the evolving guidelines, we engaged Drummond Woodsum, Bill Stockmeyer, who is historically, annually been the attorney out of that firm, who is a finance person and who has always prepared, as long as I recall, our warrant documents and all the procedures and the legal language that we need to hold a legitimate budget meeting and make sure that we're in keeping with the law. However, holding a budget meeting through the restarting of Maine's economy plan, stage 2, which is set to occur in June, limits the public gatherings that are likely going to occur in something like a budget meeting to no more than 50 people. And that would be inclusive of members of the board, and officials, town officials, municipal officials, and other district staff, as in school administration, myself. So our intention is to have the meeting in the junior high gymnasium, but it'll be very limited to a number of persons in that part of the facility. So if you don't mind, I'm going to read to you some provisions generated by Drummond Woodsum, eventually shared with MSMA in the guidance that they offered as far as who we need to communicate our identified procedures to. And that would be 3 state officials responsible for respectively education, and that's Commissioner Pender-Macon, person responsible for elections. That's going to be addressed. It is addressed to Julie Flynn, the Deputy Secretary to the Secretary of State, and the COVID Safe Practices person, and that's Commissioner Heather Johnson. So each of those 3 individuals received this letter. And a letter was also copied to our board chair that lays out our proposal for convening this meeting in keeping with the COVID safe practices. And this was a letter to notify the officials of our planned meeting, explaining our procedures, and asking if there is any further guidance. It's not a letter asking permission for it. It's just more of informing, and barring no response from those parties, all the above stated will occur, with the exception of what has been looming here all the while, and this is why at this 11th hour this is going out, is that Governor Mills may at any time between this evening's meeting and the date of that scheduled meeting, June 16th, change our plans through an executive order. And we'll have to stay tuned. So we are going ahead with initiating this warrant procedure and the signing of it, and declaring when we're going to have this meeting, with the understanding that that may change at any time. So as long as that's clear, if it's all right with you, I'm going to read through this so the public understands this, and I will be posting this on our website. I wanted you to hear this first. And we will also be meeting with town officials on Tuesday when we bring the warrants for posting and talk about these procedures. And there's also the other piece of the budget validation referendum, which is run by the towns, and that's on July 14th with our ballots as part of that, but the same procedural pieces. And again, a great deal could change between now and then. We have our meeting, our budget meeting, and something changes in July. So I think we've grown accustomed to expect change at any moment, and we're trying our best to address that. But once we proceed with the signing of these warrants, it becomes something that we're going to have to take some action to undo with a special meeting if we're called upon to do that. So I'll just get going. So there'll be a primary room. The junior high gymnasium is where we have the meeting annually, with attendance limited to 50 persons, including the election officials, school personnel, the school building's other rooms, and those will be the ones down the wing through the gym lobby area. There's the locker rooms and the coach's office and the restrooms, and that initial wing down the main floor of the junior high is where those other rooms will be utilized. The school building's other rooms will be used as needed and connected by speakers, so that each room will contain a gathering of not more than 50 people. In this way, there will be separate gatherings in each room, but a single budget meeting. Everyone will have an opportunity to be heard in all gathering rooms. Everyone will have an opportunity to vote. To conduct the vote in the separate rooms, the elected moderator will travel between rooms, or as appropriate, the moderator will appoint ballot clerks for assistance. The budget meeting will not be conducted by remote participation, and that is the law. As required by law, visitors will register and must be physically present to speak or vote. Our school district budget plan will follow the Restarting Maine's Economy Plan COVID-19 prevention sample checklist is something I will also make available as a provided link, but I will read to you. There are 12 points on that checklist. But generally, the procedures dealing with sanitizing, for example, 1, rooms, chairs, equipment will be set up at least 7 days in advance of the meeting. Cleaning and disinfecting will be used before and after the meeting, including floors, all doors and handles and furniture and equipment. And that is why this building will be totally off limits to any activities at all, so that we can enforce this 7-day in advance piece here. Budget documents will be available by internet, and they will be shortly. Our budget booklet went to press today. physical and social distancing will be used. Chairs will be spaced at least 6 feet apart, and so forth, with tables set up. We'll have lines marked on the floor to ensure that people are entering at 6-foot intervals, with the clerks accounting for voters as they enter and being sure that they are registered voters. Hand sanitizers will be available at the voter registration tables and in the rooms used. We'll ensure that the clerks have the PPE equipment, including face cloth coverings and gloves, and minors will not be permitted to attend. The moderator will explain and propose specific procedures to expedite the meeting within legal parameters. And one thing that is mentioned, it's typically an hour or less, and that's specified in this notice that went to the commissioners. And there's the written ballot procedures, but it's all very carefully regulated. This is a letter that's gone out probably from every SAU that, well, all the SAUs have to conduct this budget meeting process. And it is our hope that we don't have any changes, because I think it is important that our community has an opportunity to participate in this process. I think that's vital for them to ask questions and get an understanding of the budget the board has proposed and set forth. Understanding that we are in challenging economic times is an understatement, but we have a school district of over 2,000 students and over 400 employees. And it is something that we need, as in this budget, to maintain what we have and provide our students with the best education possible within our means, our resources. So again, I think it's very important that this meeting takes place and our public has an opportunity to participate in the process. Are there any questions?
Roberta, I
well,
did.
hopefully. Go ahead, Kara.
Oh, it wasn't about, so thank you for explaining all that and your, obvious care and thinking about following the guidelines for the health and safety. I think that is in these times as we're adjusting to what it means. It's really important that people know that, that is more than just a polite consideration. But to go back to the discussion, obviously the DOE is looking at various scenarios about, what could happen in the fall. And, we're participating, people, I'm just gonna say, like in higher ed are also working on this too. And I'm wondering if it wouldn't potentially be a benefit if you hadn't already thought about it, about asking, the teachers collectively, maybe based upon their schools and grades served, right, to start thinking about these type of scenarios, because it's like return to normal or a hybrid or online learning or mixed, right? I mean, there's like a couple of possibilities there, because I do think having now participated in that exercise myself, it's given me a lot to think about, just to think about how this could, all the different scenarios, which I think being proactive about, not necessarily waiting for the DOE, obviously, right? That's the DOE and the governor are going to decide these things, right? But really spending some time to get teachers thinking about these things beforehand, so that there isn't kind of this rush to react to what's happening, and some considerations. I mean, you can imagine a consideration where maybe we would need to invest and start purchasing plexiglass shields that faculty members would stand behind, right? I mean, like the concerns of thinking about what teachers could maybe not return to work because of health issues and how we're going to address that. And that is a real concern, you know, that there are going to be teachers that are not going to be able to come back because they're going to be in that category, right? And how we're going to address that. And so I would ask for, you know, as much proactive work on that beforehand, and thinking about how that might be handled, because 3 months potentially is not a very long time to make that scenario. You know what I'm saying? Like, what if I'm making this up, right? But what if, like, you know, 4 out of the 9 fifth grade teachers across the district fall into that category, right? Like, there is this that we really seriously have to consider, that we've never had to consider. And I think that actually is important for us going into the budget meeting. If we want to secure, you know, the funds that we need to run, you know, I think even getting the public to understand that we may need to have smaller classrooms. And what does that mean? Would we potentially need to hire more teachers? Like, there is this real scenarios that I think getting people to start thinking about, and what that means to continue to provide, you know, a high level of education to our students is important. So anyway.
Thank you, Kara. And you make some great points. And we have been working on some of those very points. I don't know if you recall, but we had teams generated from elementary staff, middle, and senior high of teachers soliciting their input on needs just for this upcoming 5 days of PD that we have. In the end of the contract, once students are through on June 5th. But certainly, in looking at the notes, those thoughts are flying through everyone's head. I just had a meeting with the Greater Kennebec superintendents today. We meet every Thursday at 1:00, and the same things are coming forth, the what if scenarios. And though those are all valid points, and there are some that are actually captured in a spreadsheet we've created with different categories of impact. When we think about the application we're going to put forth, I'll talk about that in a little bit with through my superintendent's report. But things we need to function: hardware, software, training, special equipment. And you mentioned, you know, I'm going to meet with Scott Washburn tomorrow about installing the plexiglass stations. I mean, there are a number of things that need to be done to this physical plant to ensure that there's a safe return at whatever point that is. The masks, the protective equipment, and the volume of those that we will need to access are all things that are swirling around the nation. And certainly the state of Maine, certainly the Kennebec superintendents and principals, as Dan's talking about, we're all have the same worries about how we're going to meet the needs and try to keep public education whole, because it is a vital part of our civil society. I think we're believers in that.
One other point I would echo to the public, particularly around the budget, which is returning students to school in the safest conditions is essential, not just for their education, but for the return of the economy. Parents cannot go back to their jobs, you know, if that, you know what I'm saying, if they have to be at home with their kids. And there are certain aspects in which, you know, that's a very important linchpin in our society that, you know, allows for the economy to function, right? Not just the fact of getting a budget passed to pay the people working, right, in the district, but it also allows parents to return, you know, to work if this is an issue, you know, because obviously it is an issue. I know for many parents it is an issue right now, right? And it's unclear how much longer the federal government will, you know, sustain people to continue to pay at a percentage if they can't return to work. So I think these are all important points that we need to socialize as our messaging out there.
Okay, while we are talking about our budget, we have a couple of items that we have to address that we've addressed before, but we need to address again. One of them actually is not on the agenda, but we were reminded of, I'm not sure if you'll remember, but way back in March, we voted on holding a separate budget meeting for the capital reserve funds for the school construction project. We didn't actually hold that meeting in April because of the COVID emergency. So our intention is to put that article on with our budget meeting in June. So I would entertain a motion that the action of the superintendent to revise the warrant for the annual budget meeting presented to this meeting for approval so as to include in Article 20 requesting voter authorization to expend funds from the Capital Reserve Fund be ratified and approved, and that the March 19th, 2020 authorization of this board of a separate special district meeting for that purpose, subsequently canceled to COVID-19 emergency, be rescinded.
So moved.
Second that.
Second.
Thank you. Moved by Danielle and seconded by Roy, that the action of the superintendent to revise the warrant for the annual budget meeting presented to this meeting for approval so as to include in Article 20 requesting voter authorization to expend funds from the Capital Reserve Fund be ratified and approved, and that the March 19th, 2020 authorization of this board of a separate special district meeting for that purpose, subsequently canceled due to the COVID-19 emergency, be rescinded. Any discussion? Seeing none. Booton,
Yes.
Boyden, yes. Caverly, yes. Davis Folsom,
Yes.
Hussey, Kinley,
Yes.
Kugelmeyer,
Yeah.
White,
Yes.
Williams. Okay, and that passes 9-0-0. Thank you. And then the next article, or the next motion, which is included on our agenda, we voted on when we approved the budget, but because we later discussed approving them electronically or putting our electronic signatures on the budget warrant, we have to revise it so that the warrant actually says it can be electronically signed. So I will read this whole thing again after I take a deep breath. So I would entertain a motion, a vote, that the vote entitled "Vote to Call and Approve the Warrants for the Budget Meeting and the Budget Validation Referendum and to Authorize the Notice of Amounts Adopted be approved in form presented to this meeting, and that a copy of said vote be included with the minutes of this meeting. Vote to call and approve the warrants for the budget meeting and the budget validation referendum, and to authorize the notice of amounts adopted, voted, that the warrant for the Maine School Administrative District number 49, the district budget meeting presented to the meeting, be approved, and that a district budget meeting be called for June 16th, 2020, for the purpose of voting on the annual budget for the district for the 2020-2021 fiscal year, that the warrant and notice of election for the district budget validation referendum presented to the meeting be approved, and that a district budget validation referendum be called for July 14th, 2020, for the purpose of approving the budget adopted at the district budget meeting for the 2020-2021 fiscal year, that the form of notice of amounts adopted at the budget meeting presented to this meeting be approved, and that the superintendent of schools of the district be authorized and directed to complete said notice in accordance with the district budget meeting on June 16th, 2020, and to cause copies of said notice as completed to be delivered to the municipal clerks of each municipality of the district for posting at polling places for the July 14th, 2020 district budget validation referendum, and that the budget meeting warrant and notice of election and notice of amounts adopted at the budget meeting shall each be signed by a majority of the school board, and that such signatures may be made electronically by execution of counterparts or in person at the convenience of members of the school board. A true copy, as adopted by a majority of the school board, must attest.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Moved by Stu and seconded by Roy. Do I have to read it all again? I will. That the vote entitled, vote to call and approve the warrants for the budget meeting and the budget validation referendum and to authorize the notice of amounts adopted be approved in form and presented to this meeting, and that a copy of said vote be included with the minutes of this meeting. Vote to call and approve the warrants for the budget meeting and the budget validation referendum and to authorize the notice of amounts adopted. Voted that the warrant for the main school administrative district number 49, the district budget meeting, presented to the meeting be adopted, and that a district budget meeting be called for June 16th, 2020, for the purpose of voting on the annual budget for the district for the 2020-2021 fiscal year. That the warrant and notice of election for the district budget validation referendum be presented to the meeting, be approved, and that a district budget referendum be called for July 14th, 2020, for the purpose of approving the budget adopted at the district budget meeting for the 2020-2021 fiscal year. That the form of notice of amounts adopted at budget meeting presented to this meeting be approved, and that the superintendent of schools of the district be authorized and directed to complete said notice in accordance with district budget meeting on June 16th, 2020, and to cause copies of said notice as completed to be delivered to the municipal clerks of each municipality of the district for posting at the polling places for the July 14th, 2020 district validation referendum, and that the budget meeting warrant, the warrant and notice of election, and the notice of amounts adopted at the budget meeting shall each be signed by a majority of the school board, and that such signatures may be made electronically by execution of counterparts or in person at the convenience of members of the school board. A true copy, as adopted by a majority of the school board, attest. Any discussion? Seeing none. Wooten.
Yes.
Thank you. Boyden, yes.
Yes.
Caverly. Davis Folsom.
Yes.
Hussey.
Yes.
Kinley.
Yes.
Kugelmeyer.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Thank you. That passes 9-0-0. And that we do have that electronically, so that will go alphabetically. So I'll sign it first, and then it will sort of kick off, and it will go alphabetically to each person, and it's really easy. It's DocuHub. So you'll open it, and it'll tell you where to sign, and it gives you a little place my screen I can draw with my finger, but there are probably other options too. But if anyone runs into any problems, please reach out immediately. There is a timeline with the posting of the award. So if you run into any trouble, please let people know. Okay, we'll move on to resignations. None? All right, appointments. Could I have I have one on here. I was going to do it second. Do you want to do it first? Okay. So could we have a motion to approve Kim Texiera as food service employee as her 90-day probation period is complete?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Neil and seconded by Ray to approve Kim Texiera as a food service employee as her 90-day probation period is complete. Any discussion? Seeing none. Booton,
Yes.
Yes.
Boyden, yes. Caverly, Davis Folsom,
Yes.
Hussey,
Yes.
Kinley,
Yes.
Kugelmeyer,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Okay, it's approved for Kim Texier as a food service worker, 900. We also have an addendum. We would entertain a motion to approve Carly Cooper as special education teacher for the REACH program.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Neil and seconded by Stu. Mrs. Hersom, can you give us a little bit of information?
Certainly. First of all, we're thrilled to find a candidate to put forth. Carly will serve as the REACH program special education teacher, and we have spent the better part of the year trying to fill that position. So we're thankful. Her education, she has a BS from Thomas College in elementary education and psychology, and she has experience as a resource room teacher at Mount View Middle School. She's been there for the past 2 years.
Any further discussion? Seeing none. Booton,
Yes.
Boyden, yes. Caverly, Davis Folsom,
Yes.
Hussey,
Yes.
Kinley,
Yes.
Kugelmeyer,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Williams. 900 to approve Carly Cooper as a special education teacher for the REACH program. Thank you. Do we have any committee reports? I don't think so. The only thing I would say is that from the Finance Committee, the budget FAQs and fact sheets are available online. And if people have questions, they should certainly reach out with those.
This
Now
isn't a,
we'll have the superintendent's report.
oh, and Jenny, I didn't bring this up in new business, but maybe after the superintendent report, we can just talk about the letter, the letter that the board wrote to seniors, and if we're gonna send that out and how we want to send that out.
Sure.
Thank you. To begin with, we have an update. The district has received 397 access points, and I think they're Galaxy tablets. Yes. Our technology department is preparing them to distribute, and those come to us from the Maine Department of Education. So I want to say thank you to the Maine DOE, and specifically a DOE specialist, Beth Lambert, who is responsible for this and her efforts to connect all Maine students who are lacking access during this COVID closure. So those will go out before the close of the school year with a subscription paid for by the Department of Education, and then we'll get into those households. An update on the CARES Act funding, the Education Stabilization Fund, through the CARES Act for Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. And these funds are coming to us through Title I formula. About 80% of what we receive for our Title I allocation. However, these funds must be spent on allowable activities, and districts are encouraged to make one-time and or sustainable investments to address challenges incurred specifically by COVID-19. So the money is specifically targeted at mitigating some of those costs that the districts have incurred due to the closure. Those access points would have been an example. I was listening today during our superintendent's meeting, and some superintendents got ahead of the DOE release and purchased access points to their own expense. We were fortunate. We were on the front end of it, and I believe that resource has been depleted right now. So we're very fortunate. So the application was just released this week, and we are working on a narrative identifying the goals, needs, and implementation plans, much like what Kara had talked about. Those are all questions that need to be answered, and there are costs associated with programming and services, hardware, the software. One example of a software cost is the NUIA subscription that we purchased, and those subscriptions historically have been limited to junior high, 6th grade for placement, and 9th grade when we had the BAR grant. We have purchased this for K-12 students because we identified the need for a universal screener when our students return to us in the fall, given that the curricula was suspended on March 13th. Some of the principals talked, I think Dan and Sean talked about, and Brian maybe, those transition meetings, but for all of our teachers and administrators, our staff, to understand where those disruptions occurred in the delivery of our curriculum, and how can we get our students back on track. And part of that is identifying where they're at when they return to us, whether it be virtually or in person. So our staff are going to learn how to not just administer and proctor this, but how to interpret the information. The benefit of NWEA is there are 3 real-time screeners over the course of the year that we will not need to wait a year out to get, like we would with the MEA results. And I think this will be very instructive to our staff. It'll communicate also to students and their families where they're at and how we need to move them forward. So that's just one example of what COVID-related expense would be. We've mentioned the plexiglass stations, the PD, the hardware, the physical plant, other modifications. There was an editorial in the Sentinel this weekend. I think a physician wrote in about hand washing stations. I mean, that's an extreme, but that is one of those things where you look at running plumbing for something like that, or just installing hand sanitizer stations all over the place. We'll have to really think about how much is enough, how much is sufficient. And those are all expensive prospects. So those are certainly things that we're thinking about. And as I mentioned, we have created a spreadsheet with suggestions that categorize those costs in different areas so we can look at it and submit an application. There's no deadline, but our intention is soon. Typically, the title applications are due by July 1, and we certainly intend to get this CARES application out before then. On another note, our architectural and engineering firm, CHA, continues their work on the feasibility study that we hired them to do back in February when you selected them. They immediately collected information from us from the 3 school applications that we filed, and floor plans and any other physical plan information, facilities operating costs, fuel usage, transportation information. They collected that pretty immediately, but most recently they visited a small team, 2 of them, the principal architect and an engineer, visited each of the schools and went through the buildings. They were in protective equipment, just for your awareness. And we scheduled times when staff weren't around. Scott Washburn accompanied them, and I met them briefly at each of the sites. But they're collecting information. They took a lot of photographs of the interior, wanted to know very specifically in the floor plans where special programs were housed, and they looked at the exterior and the envelope of the buildings, but also discovered they also conducted a vernal pool study on a 20-acre parcel of land that the district owns. And part of conducting that vernal pool study, that it can be done in a little window, I think a couple of weeks, end of April, early May. So it was now or a year from now, to in part see if that's a buildable parcel. No decision on that, but it's a piece of property that we owned and acquired many years ago, and maybe Stu has some recollection of that. He seemed to be familiar with it. It's down behind the track, I think adjacent to the PAL fields. But Stu, could you add to that?
It was purchased back shortly after Steve Grenier first came on the school board, which would probably be back in the early 2000s. About 20 years ago, I'm guessing.
So that's great. It's something that we already own. It's there. And their plan is to have a report, and it's a very small scale, limited study. I mean, there are many phases in this project that we've initiated, but they should have that report ready to present to the board and to the community and go on with the other phases of soliciting input early fall. And that concludes my report.
Great. So at the last meeting, we did talk briefly about sending a letter to the seniors from the school board.
Could I ask a quick question of Roberta?
Oh, sure. Sorry.
Among your discussions with the Kennebec superintendents and the Department of Ed, has there been any discussion or any thought given to possible testing for the COVID-19 virus within the school systems?
I have not heard anything about that directly. No, I'm sorry.
It would strike me that that's a fairly important element into ultimately controlling the disease. And I have no idea how it would work or how it would be done. But if we have someone in a building, a teacher or a student, who is showing symptoms and is contagious, I think there should be some type of protocol so that they could get tested.
Well, there is some protocol in place way back before the closure occurred. We convened a meeting with our crisis team and invited Beth Lambert to be part of that as dealing with those very specific protocols. And one part of a protocol is to have a space to segregate anyone showing symptoms, and providing a mask, isolating them, whether it's student or staff, and moving them out of the facility. But to some degree, as best we can, as far as testing on site. I was talking to Dan Bowers earlier because I heard someone talk about graduations and taking people's temperatures, and that was initially part of the guidance, but he checked back and finds that no longer is the case. But it's certainly something, as Kira said, and as the CDC said, before this happened in February, we had influenza illnesses at Fairfield Primary School over the threshold of me needing to report to the CDC that we had a certain level of absenteeism. And the question being, at what point do you close the school? And the guidance and the information is it's more monitoring the adults and your ability to safely supervise students. And that's the threshold to watch. So we have to have staff who are well, and we may be faced with that situation that Kara outlines, and that is a concern. How do we keep the buildings open should we have a number of our adults who are out and we're no longer able to, let alone educate, but supervise students? So long non-answer, Stu, but I don't have a.
Sounds like you're already ahead of the curve. I wasn't suggesting that schools needed to do testing, but it would be nice if somebody contracts the flu or COVID-19 or any other contagious disease, if we're able to identify and get them dealt with.
Yeah, and I think the bigger question is about contact tracing, which, you know, I mean, obviously the DOE is going to be thinking about all these things, but I didn't read the article about the hand washing, but I also think that we need to have an aggressive hand washing campaign. It is the simplest thing to do to stop the spread of the disease. Like, we talk about the plexiglass thing, but honestly, if students wash their hands before they came into a class and when they left the class, you know, and you just had a couple of good behaviors in there, you're going to really minimize it. Like, you know, the other challenges, of course, is, I'm sure Scott is already thinking about this, but is about the ventilation, because it's clear from all the studies that have been done that, you know, ventilation really matters in order to keep the, you know, when the virus does get in the air, right? Like, how to basically move it out as quickly as possible. So, you know, I hope, I mean, yes, it's a question of money, but these are the types of things we should be, and, you know, seriously looking into. And I mean, I made a joke, but I'm really serious about, like, how many classes could we have outside for a really long time? I'm not joking about that. I'm like, that's also, like, you're like, well, that's a no-brainer, you know, like, you could hold class outside, you know, really for a while for people, and you automatically cut down. So I think, you know, we need to get thinking outside of the physical building for where it is possible. Yeah, because if, you know, if it breaks out in the school, you've infected the entire community. I mean, you will have, that's what's going to happen. And that's the case you want to, you know, avoid the best that you can. And of course, sanitizing the buses twice a day. I mean, there's a level at which I'm like, oh my God, it's going to be so much work to try to secure this, but.
Other questions for Mrs. Firstrom? Sorry, I didn't mean to jump ahead. Okay.
And thank you to our teachers. I mean, our principals, for all their hard work, and the teachers as well. It felt bad that we didn't get a chance to say that to them when they were on.
All right. So we did talk about a letter at our last board meeting for the seniors, and Kara went ahead and got that drafted for us. And I made some suggested edits to that. I think we should circulate that a bit more and try to solicit a bit more feedback. My main thought is that I'd like to keep it as upbeat as possible. I mean, we have to recognize that, you know, that they have missed out on some things this spring for sure, but they did have 12 and a half normal-ish years of education, and we want to celebrate the work that they did to get here, and that let's not have the last 3 months feel like it takes away from any of that, because they really have had a successful run to get here, and graduating from high school is a milestone. We want to honor that, and I'm really glad that they got to participate with the principal and the assistant principal and help design what they want graduation to look like. I think that I agree. I think that was probably very important for them to be able to do that, to have a say in what that was going to look like, since it wasn't going to look like what they've grown up with. I mean, if they're from the area, then they know what graduation looks like, and this will look different. So I do think we should look for a little more feedback on that letter, and try, probably will it go out, I would think as an email would be easiest.
Yeah, I was thinking an Infant Campus, but for the feedback, I shared it with everybody on the Google Doc. So do you just want to turn it into a PDF, Jenny, and I can send it to you and you can send it out to everybody, or, and people could send comments?
Sure, that's fine.
All right, so I'll do that.
So we're not going to make comments on the Google Doc then?
You can
get into the Google Doc, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, go right ahead and make comments in there, right? That's how I did them. I changed it to suggestions so that they would show.
Yeah, and I accepted like almost everything you suggested.
Yeah. Yeah, my biggest thing was I want to make sure that they remember that,
Right.
these last 3 months were the abnormal part. The rest of it,
And the reason we're sending, just as a recap, we're sending them this is because we want to recognize that, no, they didn't have their last couple of months of normalcy, but, it's important for us to validate what Jenny's saying, their hard work throughout. Yeah.
So if we could probably get that finalized by the middle of next week, then we can get it emailed out. So that won't take any time. Danielle?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Cara for getting it started. So thank you, Cara.
Definitely, I agree.
You're welcome. And then we had talked about, some board members had mentioned sending out a similar type letter to the 6th grade and 8th grade. I put it in there because other board members had mentioned it, and I'm agnostic to it. I don't know if other people wanted to do that. Jenny mentioned, they were already getting notes from their, so I don't know. I obviously defer to the board on their feelings about that.
Yeah, my thought was that in those age ranges, they're not leaving us; they're staying with us, and they're getting a letter from their principals to help them move forward to the next step. I definitely think that the seniors may appreciate a letter from us, but I'm not sure that we need to venture down to the 6th grade or 8th grade. But I'm open to what everybody else thinks.
I agree with you, Jenny. Keep this as a letter to the seniors.
I'm okay with that too, Jenny.
Okay, so unless we hear otherwise from people, we'll try to wrap up that letter to the seniors by the middle of next week and get that emailed out to people. Does anybody have any other business for tonight? All right, well, it was nice to see all of you. All of you that turn your camera on. And I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Cara and seconded by Ray. Booton.
Yes.
Boyden. Yes. Caverly. Yes. Davis Folsom.
Yes.
Hussey.
Yes.
Kinley.
Yes.
Kugelmeyer. I guess so. Yes.
White.
Yes.
And Williams.
Yes.
All right. 900. We'll adjourn at 8:36. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good night.